If you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
It seems like everywhere you look online, there's another theory about the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump at his rally more than a week ago. Some say it was staged by the right to garner sympathy for Donald Trump. Others say it was an inside job by the left to take him down. Was alleged shooter Thomas Matthew Crooks planning a larger killing spree? Did he act alone? What's fact? What's fiction? Well, former FBI and CIA agent Tracy Walder joins us to help sort it all out. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. In the week since the shooting of former President Donald Trump and others out in Butler, Pennsylvania, the number of theories and rumors surrounding this event have exploded. And understandably, right? There's a lot of question marks surrounding this. And since we know very little about the alleged shooter, 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, it seems like speculation and misinformation have filled that vacuum. Some are based on partisan politics, some on different views of the world, some on new cell phone videos that show angles of the shooting. And I will tell you what, we are not going to ignore it. We are not going to shy away from it. No, we are going to talk about it right now. We're going to try to separate fact from fiction to the best we can. So we're going to start with this theory that the whole thing was somehow political. Social media user Ron Basilian put it this way: one screen, two movies. And what he seems to mean is that at first, everyone saw basically the same video of the shooting, but they interpreted it in two different ways, depending on their political beliefs. So you could say there are two dueling conspiracy theories, one for each end of America's polarized political spectrum. Could Thomas Matthew Crooks have had a partisan agenda and wanted to take out Donald Trump, the now Republican Party nominee for president? It's a possibility. I mean, authorities have released no information about Crooks' motive. Apparently left no manifesto or digital footprint that could reveal more clues, more motive, more idea about he was going to do this, no plan. So it's all just conjecture at this point. But there's also reporting that Crooks have been searching about President Joe Biden and the Democratic National Convention too. So it's all very odd. Basilian is one of many on social media now seemingly questioning how the shooter was able to climb to the roof of a building to get a clear shot at Donald Trump. It's a fair question, but he seems to suggest that law enforcement looked the other way to allow him to do it because of their leftist political leanings. Basilian acknowledged that he doesn't have proof to back up this theory, but he says it seems highly suspicious. And he's not alone among Trump supporters in suspecting the failure of the Secret Service to prevent the assassination attempt points to a larger conspiracy led by, yes, this is the theory, Democratic President Joe Biden. And there were several rumors that the Secret Service was part of the assassination plot, though many have been discredited. One was that the agency refused to give Trump extra security before the rally, though the Secret Service says it's actually increased staffing. That a post from someone claiming to be a law enforcement sniper at the rally who said they were ordered not to fire on the shooter was apparently debunked after it turned out that no sharpshooter with his name was working at that day on that Saturday. Many of the rumors and conspiracies first emerged on fringe social media platforms like 4chan before migrating to larger sites like X, TikTok, Facebook, where they were seen by a lot more people. On the Sunday after the shooting, Alex Jones, maybe one of the most prolific conspiracy theorists in America, blasted out an email with a subject line that read in part, quote, "Desperate deep state will try to assassinate Trump again." Based on recent posts, Russian state media, some pro-Kremlin influencers, and right-leaning groups like QAnon have also blamed Democrats for what happened or questioned authorities' explanations. But now let's go to the other side of the aisle, because they're not innocent either. And when I say this on both sides, I'm talking really about extremes on both sides, because there are those on the left who are arguing that the attack was staged to garner sympathy and support for Donald Trump so he could seize power, a false flag theory. And they focused on the photos of Trump immediately after the shooting with his fist raised in defiance. One ex-user identifying as a 60-year-old Democrat and, quote, not a conspiracy theorist, baselessly claimed that, quote, Trump will do anything to stay out of prison, including a staged assassination attempt. That post has over 1 million views. According to NewsGuard, this is a news rating service, the word staged trended on X the day of the assassination attempt. In the first 24 hours of the shooting, the word was mentioned more than 300,000 times on X. What do you think about that? One account that originally had less than 500 followers falsely claimed that Trump faked his injury using a blood pill. The post racked up 3 million views just hours after the shooting. Also supporting the stage theory, users on Facebook shared a fake photo of Secret Service agents rushing Trump to safety. The photo was altered to show the agents smiling. There was also a photo that supposedly showed an uninjured Donald Trump after the rally, but it turned out that picture was taken from 2022. But that's social media, unfortunately, where people are free to express their opinions without needing facts to back them up. But what about sources that are typically more trusted, like federal, state, and local officials? In a post on X with more than 16 million views, Republican Representative Mike Collins claimed without evidence that President Biden sent the order for the assassination attempt. Collins referenced a comment that President Biden made to donors in a private call days before the shooting, in which he said that it was time to put Trump in a bullseye. Now, you could question whether or not that language was appropriate and whether or not that was the right thing to say, but there is no evidence to link that comment or others with the motivations or the actions of the suspected shooter, Mr. Crooks, or to even say that it fueled that. And by the way, I didn't even mention the fact that there's been no evidence to suggest that President Biden gave an order for the hit on Donald Trump. What a legal development, right? Chilling. That's one way to describe it. Really chilling. Makes you think that the world is sometimes not an easy place, not a safe place. You know, one of the scariest things that can happen to you is if you get injured. That's incredibly traumatic. That's a very confusing time. But that's why I want to take a minute to call out our great partner and sponsor here on Sidebar, Morgan & Morgan. This is a firm that you would want in your corner because they are specialists in this area. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm, and for a reason. They win a lot. They have secured multi-million-dollar verdicts and settlements. They secured a $120 million verdict in one of the first personal injury trials post-pandemic. And by the way, in that case, there was a pretrial offer of just $20,000. Yeah, Morgan & Morgan, they don't settle for lowball offers. They will fight to protect your legal rights and for what you deserve in compensation. Now, one of the best things about Morgan & Morgan is how easy they make this whole process for their clients. From submitting your claim to uploading documents to signing contracts to talking to your whole legal team, it can all be done from your smartphone. That's it. Seeing if you have a case only takes a few minutes. Oh, and also, there's no upfront fee. You only pay them if you win. So if you're injured, you could start by easily submitting a claim at forthepeople.com/LC Sidebar or by dialing pound law. That's pound 529 on your phone. An Instagram post with over 500,000 views from far-right Missouri state legislative candidate Valentina Gomez also claims the security failure was intentional. Gomez said that she was in the stands behind Trump at the Pennsylvania rally and believes his security was compromised. But what side was Thomas Matthew Crooks on? The truth is, investigators found internet searches for both Trump and President Joe Biden on his phone. He had searched for the dates of Trump's rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, and the Republican and Democratic national conventions. And also, while we don't know much about Crooks' political leanings, it appears he was a registered Republican. And that brings us to another theory, the killing spree theory, because according to multiple law enforcement sources, a post on the gaming platform Steam that's credited to the suspected gunman reads, "July 13th will be my premiere. Watch as it unfolds." Now, investigators are working to determine whether that post is legitimate or not, because there has been reporting that the FBI has debunked that, saying it didn't even come from Crooks. But here is what we do know. Would-be assassin Thomas Matthew Crooks had apparently researched former President Donald Trump's movements before he shot him, while also looking up President Biden's, and even a member of the British royal family. And that's not all. It also seems Crooks had searched for FBI Director Christopher Wray, Attorney General Merrick Garland, former Mayor Rudy Giuliani, House Speaker Mike Johnson, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, and others. There's also been reporting that Crooks even had a photo of Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis on his phone. Remember, she's been prosecuting former President Donald Trump in Georgia for allegedly trying to overturn the 2020 presidential election. And by the way, almost all of the photos appear to have been downloaded from the internet and were not accompanied by any threatening language or messages. So were they part of a master plan to kill for the sake of killing, or to target certain people, or just a bunch of random internet searches? And knowing so little about Crook's motive opens the door for one more theory. The second shooter theory, which says he didn't act alone. And we've talked about this before, but one reason for this theory is because two high-level employees of the National Center for Media Forensics at the University of Colorado in Denver had analyzed audio of the shooting and drew a very interesting conclusion. They counted 9 shots, and they believe the first 3 shots were consistent with alleged weapon A, the next 5 were consistent with alleged weapon B, and the final acoustic impulse was emitted by a possible weapon C. And so, of course, the question is, was weapon C from another shooter? Was it another would-be assassin? Was it somebody working with Crooks? Or was it a Secret Service sniper, a local sniper team at the scene? I should also tell you that according to the Washington Post, 2 other audio experts, one from Montana State University and the other from Beck Audio Forensics, counted a total of 10 gunshots. They say the first 8 shots had similar acoustic characteristics, that they were fired within 6 seconds of each other. Then there was a 9th shot from an apparent different area, and 16 seconds later, a 10th shot. The last 2, they say, had different audio characteristics from the first 8. But they also say audio in and of itself can't tell you exactly where the shots came from. And something else to note about that is that there were apparently 4 counter sniper teams on site that day. One team that fatally shot the attempted assassin, and apparently a member of local law enforcement had also engaged the shooter, seeming to mean that this local marksman had fired a shot too. So the shots could have very well come from multiple sources and not have been a second culprit, a second gunman. So with those theories in mind, I want to bring in right now Tracy Walder, former FBI and CIA agent, News Nation national security contributor, and author of The Unexpected Spy, to talk a little bit about fact from fiction. Because if anybody's going to set us on the right course, it's Tracy Walder. So Tracy, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. So everybody knows, this is the first time I've spoken to you since we've seen what happened, 9 days ago. A, your reaction to it, and B, why do you think there are so many rumors and different theories about this assassination attempt?
So thank you for having me. I'm going to actually answer your second question first, if that's okay. Sure. I think the reason that there are so many conspiracy theories is I do think, first of all, obviously social media. We really haven't had assassination attempts really since Reagan, if you think about it. And we didn't have social media in the same way that we do today. We didn't have all the cell phones, the cameras, all of that. And so I obviously think that that makes these things spread like wildfire, which I understand. I also think, too, the fact that we don't have, this clear motive, people want to have a why, right? And so then they take it upon themselves to, I guess, explain the why. I also think the third reason is because in this country, in my opinion, we are far more polarized than I've ever seen us in the past. And so I do think that because of that polarization, these conspiracy theories on both sides, quite frankly, have really spread like wildfire. My initial reaction, just from a tactical perspective, first things first, political violence of any kind is unacceptable, full stop. I don't care what party you are. That's how I feel about this. But I also think, too, in my opinion, I do think that this was a failure tactically by the Secret Service. He was only 300-400 yards, quite frankly, from where the president was. An AR-15 round can go 500 to 600 yards. That perimeter, in my opinion, was just far too small.
Okay, and that's the point. That part right there, I think, is the key part about this. Because, and by the way, as we're recording this, and we're going to do a separate sidebar on this, the director of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheadle, is testifying and explaining how this could have happened. And I think that the real key is why we're seeing these alternative theories is, how is it possible a 20-year-old, seemingly inexperienced shooter could commit this crime, expose the vulnerabilities of the Secret Service, and do this unless, of course, and one of the theories I mentioned was, it was an inside job, right? He was given the key to set up there, and people looked the other way because it was an attempt to ultimately kill former President Donald Trump. He was allowed to do this. What's your answer to that theory?
Look, I don't obviously agree with that theory. And in my opinion, what I do think is going to come out in regards to motive, I mean, even if we look at the assassination attempt with Reagan, that wasn't politically motivated in any way, shape, or form. He's trying to impress Jodie Foster. I think that is going to actually be similar here because we know that the shooter was researching Biden's events as well as Trump's. And I think a lot of this, in my opinion, is going to go back to the fact that he didn't make the shooting team in high school. He felt bullied. This was his way of, I guess, evening the score and showing his friends, so-called friends, what he was capable of doing. I think that's a difficult motive, right, for people to get their heads around because we don't function that way. And so I think that is kind of issue, number one. But I'm actually glad that the head of the Secret Service is testifying because the reality is the Secret Service is down staffing wise 10%, but their budget has doubled. So I guess the question is what are they doing?
That's fair. And I guess the question is, and it's a scary thing for me to say, the simplest answer was it's possible someone could infiltrate all of the security perimeters. They were able to see a gap there. And that's what it is, because it also could be people might have trouble accepting, and rightfully so, again, that this potentially lone gunman would be able to do this. And I think that's the part that it's difficult for people to accept, and I completely understand why. But from your point of view, this can happen at any point. Someone might be able to infiltrate in this way. It shouldn't have happened, but this can happen.
Unfortunately, the answer to that question is yes. We want to think that our security apparatuses, national security, local security, all of that are infallible. We want to think that. We want to believe that our heads of state are fully protected against anything like this. And the reality is nothing is infallible. And that is really difficult, I think, for us to get our brains around. And yes, you are right. The fact that this 20-year-old individual scaled that building and then hit on the top and the snipers didn't see him really until he put his head up to take the shot is really difficult for us. It makes us seem like our country has these cracks, right, around these walls that we are supposed to have. And I think that's just a really difficult thing for people to get their heads around.
What about the idea of, and I've talked about this before, with a conspiracy, right? There was a conspiracy. He was the gunman they put in there. It was this big conspiracy to a lot of different players working together to make sure this was a assassination of Donald Trump. I've always said that one of the difficulties with the conspiracy, and I've covered a number of different conspiracy cases, is even the ones that are the best organized, they're loose ends. And it's going to be very hard to coordinate that many people to commit a crime such as this. But you tell me if I'm completely wrong, because I guess, again, going back to this idea was that he wasn't acting alone, that there was, it was an inside job. Talk to me about the idea of how difficult it would be to coordinate an assassination against former President Donald Trump.
I actually totally agree with you. Someone's going to mess up at some point, right? In terms of something like that. The amount of people, sheer amount of people that it would have to take to remain silent, right? In very high ranking positions, right? Within the Secret Service, within local law enforcement, within the RNC, within Trump's inner circle, quite frankly, that would have to remain complicit in this is not realistic, right? And so, in my opinion, I just don't think that this is a conspiracy theory that holds any weight.
Is it too early to say it? Right. So Kimberly Cheeto, I've been catching some of her testimony. She says we're only 9 days out of this. The investigation's still ongoing. What would you be looking out for to suggest that there might be something more here?
That's a great question. I think, it's difficult because a lot of people are saying, oh, she's not being transparent. She's not being transparent. But in my opinion, I think the investigation, unfortunately, is going to take some time. You have to remember, we are dealing with a 20-year-old in this situation. The digital media footprint that these individuals leave is massive. And it takes a lot of time to go through that. And unfortunately, I think it's going to be a matter of weeks until we can get around that. So I know a lot of people right now are thinking, oh, the fact that she's not being transparent, that's indicative of, a conspiracy theory. But excuse me, I don't think that's something that I would necessarily be on the lookout for. I think something that you could be on the lookout for is different law enforcement agencies basically coming out and telling different stories. Because right now, what I'm getting from them is they're, for the most part, all on the same page, right? The FBI has remained quiet. They're investigating. Local police has remained quiet. They're investigating. It's really Secret Service, right, that has sort of taken the lead in terms of being verbal about this. But if you start to see other law enforcement entities come out and start to have contradicting stories, then that might be indicative of something larger.
And I know that there was reporting he had a second phone with 27 contacts. If anything comes out from that, I would imagine that could, either add to some of the conversation we're having or subtract from it about who we might have been speaking to or what. But at this point, at the time of this recording, there's no indication anybody knew he was about to do this. Talk to me about, and I imagine it's the same analysis for you, if this was an inside job and was a false flag. Right, this idea that Donald Trump and his inner circle had staged this with blood packets, and it was a staged event to do that photo op opportunity with his hand to the air. It was something put on by him and his team, that this was a false flag operation. What do you say to that one?
Yeah, I saw that one about the blood packs, in his ear. It's frustrating for me, obviously, as a CIA officer working in the Counterterrorism Center on September 11th. We got that a lot, actually, about September 11th. And I want to actually say the same thing here that I say, about September 11th conspiracy theories. Then that means that the Secret Service is completely falling on the sword for this, which is basically what CIA did in the 9/11 Commission. We had to take full responsibility for missing what led up to September 11th. And I don't see the Secret Service saying, sure, no problem. We will go ahead and take full responsibility for this ridiculous false flag operation that everyone wants to be a part of. I don't see something like that happen, not to mention that's taxpayer dollars that would be being used to have these hearings.
Yeah, and I think it's also, it's next level to imagine that you would stage an event like this where clearly someone dies, two people are injured, right, for the effort of a photo op for right, politics. I know people, and rightfully so, feel certain ways about politicians. I get it, but that also feels just too unbelievable to accept. Now, the idea here also, as I mentioned, this inexperienced shooter, no criminal history. We're still trying to find out where he would even get the training. Obviously, there's a reporting that he had gone to a range. He belonged to a shooting club. He'd gone to the range. He bought the ammunition. But, the makeshift explosive devices, the idea of being able to take that shot from that angle, though I'm told it's not that difficult. Then I mentioned the acoustics, right? This idea that there was perhaps multiple shooters. This idea that he wasn't acting alone, even though law enforcement has said he's acted alone, the evidence suggests he acted alone. What do you believe in terms of if he had any kind of help whatsoever, either leading up to the shooting or on the day and at the scene of the shooting?
So that's interesting. And let me go back to the shot itself, if that's okay.
Sure.
It's not that difficult of a shot. I don't want to say it's, the easiest shot in the world. It's not. But the interesting thing is I actually had the opportunity not that long ago to use the same type of weapon from the same era. So it was an antique that was used to shoot JFK. And I actually took the shot. I hit it on the very first try. It wasn't that difficult of a shot. And so, and I'm not an expert marksman. Obviously, I'm familiar with guns, but I'm certainly not an expert marksman. And so he is capable of being able to do that without, ranger sniper training, if that makes any sense. And so I do think it is feasible. I don't want to say it is true, but it could be feasible that he may have had assistance unbeknownst to the individuals assisting him in leading up to this, meaning people procuring weapons for him, people procuring explosives or the drones that were found in his vehicle. They may not have known what that was used for, obviously. And I think that's a very feasible idea. But I highly doubt that on the day of he had individuals, because we have far too many witnesses saying that they notified local police, that they saw someone, that they notified Secret Service or people around them, that they saw someone. And there have been no reports of other people being seen that were suspicious, only him.
And again, the idea of a second shooter, the acoustics, it seems to me that at the end of the day, and I spoke to Chad Ayers about this. First of all, you have that environment. It could be some of the reverberations of it, right? But also, I think there were multiple teams. There was the counter sniper team. There was the local team. There was his shots. I haven't seen anything to indicate there was a second shooter. Did anything from your end?
No, I mean, you have to remember in a situation like that, from an acoustic standpoint, it is almost like a bowl, if that makes any sense. And so when you are in a situation like that, you are going to hear the sounds reverberating. You have the Secret Service sniper team. I'm assuming you had local law enforcement in positions as well, though I'm uncertain about that. And then you had his shot. I think it is entirely feasible that people may have thought there were more than 2 or 3 people shooting at that particular time, simply because they're hearing the reverberations. You have things reverberating off of metal, you have things reverberating off of the concrete. And so it really does create sort of, I guess, an echo chamber, if you will.
What happens now in terms of making sure we're all on the same page about what happened? How long is that going to take? Are we always going to have theories about this, no matter what the information is? What does the FBI need to do? What does the Secret Service need to do right now or in the months to come to say, this is what happened? We want to silence any rumors, any conspiracy theories. What needs to happen in order to provide, give the American people faith in not only our institutions, but have an understanding about what happened that day?
I think that the one main thing that needs to happen is the Secret Service. Obviously, they're going to conduct an assessment after this. I think that assessment, in my opinion, needs to be made fully public, very similar to what happened with the 9/11 Commission in terms of what happened. Where did the Secret Service go wrong? I think that will be very helpful. But I think the problem with that is it is going to take months for something like that to come out, because these things take a long time. And because it's going to take months to come out, I think that people, particularly those that really do believe in these theories, are not going to believe these assessments that come out. I think transparency is key. Unfortunately, this is probably still a criminal investigation, and that they are looking, to your point, at any individuals that could have helped him, even unbeknownst to them. So the FBI is going to keep that information, for now, close to the vest. But I think once they have wrapped up that investigation, then they need to be very clear and very concise about what they found, if there are other people involved, and if criminal charges will proceed against anyone. But I do think, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, the conspiracy theories, in my opinion, will never go away.
Yeah, I 100% agree, because even though the FBI is looking into the actual criminal investigation, how the shoot, what do we know about the gunman, motive, how the shooting took place, the Secret Service is doing an internal investigation. We know the Inspector General has launched 3 investigations. Congress is doing a bipartisan investigation. This could last months on end. And while certain aspects of the story could definitely come into focus, there are others, when you think of the Kennedy assassinations, that could remain murky forever and continue to spawn conspiracies. Because the truth is, this shouldn't have happened, and this can never happen again. And so clearly people want answers. I just don't know what those answers are at this point, but I do know one thing. Tracy Walder definitely provides a little bit more clarity to us about this situation. And thank you so much for coming on. As always, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Jesse.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.